Thank you so much, President Hildebler. What an incredible honor this is. To the Board of Trustees, to the faculty and staff who have dedicated themselves to Northeastern and guided the class of 2017, and so many before you, each step of the way, thank you for your service. To the parents and grandparents and siblings and other family members and friends without whom this day would have not been possible, class of 2017, there are a lot of you, but I think it's about time you stand up and give them a shout out. What do you think? Up out of your seats and thank the people who got you here. That's what I'm talking about. Show them some love. And of course, Joshua, who represented you pretty well, talking about love and resilience and pragmatism. If he's any indication of this class, you all are well on your way. You are richly diverse, mixes of races, backgrounds, passions, all gifted with intellectual curiosity and energy and idealism and grit and determination. You are just a beautiful thing. Give yourselves a round of applause. I am so proud to be a member of your class of 2017, and I didn't have to take a single final exam. Congratulations, class of 2017. Yes, so today you become a part of the prominent history of this outstanding university. Many before you have dedicated their careers to public service. From State Senator Iris Martinez to Congressman Luis Gutierrez to Alderman Ed Smith, CTU President Karen Lewis, Cook County Recorder of Deeds Karen Yarborough, to the Chicago City Clerk Miguel del Valle, and many, many more. My hope is that they inspire you to follow in their footsteps. A little bit more about that later. Now, I'm sure right about now you're feeling some combination of exhaustion, fear, and exhilaration. And I get it, because after 8 years in Washington, believe me, I have very similar mixed emotions for different reasons. But we are both embarking on our next chapter, and that inevitably brings out a range of emotions. Now, I have a few months head start on you, and since I left the White House in January, I've had a little bit of time to catch up on some of what I've missed over the last 8 years, and I encourage you to do the same. I began with sleep, and lots of it. I got acquainted, or I should say reacquainted, with my family and friends. I've been reading books that have had nothing at all to do with my day job, and I've been watching a backlog of TV programs. 3 of my favorites, Scandal, House of Cards, and Veep, no longer seem so far-fetched. But seriously, I've had a chance to reflect on my rather long life and many of the lessons that I've learned along the way. So today I'm going to share with you the most important ones. First, find true north and never veer away. People often ask how in the world I managed to last for 8 full years in the White House, the longest serving senior advisor in history. I began to wonder what was wrong with me. What did they all know that I didn't know? Well, first of all, I love my boss, President Obama, and his First Lady. And I have respected them for as long as many of you have been on this earth. 26 years ago this summer, I met them. I believe in his values, his moral compass, and I believed in his vision for this country. And even on the worst days, and we had quite a few, we never lost sight of why we were there. Simply put, our true north was you. You and you alone. All of the people of this great country, regardless of their political party or whether or not they voted for him, That was irrelevant. President Obama knew that he had the most important job in the world, and he never took that responsibility casually. To the contrary, each day he recommitted to his true north, and with tenacious discipline, rigor, and grace and determination, he set about to do what he believed was right and just. To never put his short-term political interests ahead of what was in your interest. Of course, it was an honor for me to serve in the Obama White House, but it was not easy. Far from it. Our challenges began before he even took office, with the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, and as old as I am, I was not around then, so it was worse than it has been for a very long time. Seriously, millions of people were losing their jobs, their homes, life savings were evaporating as the stock market plummeted. The unemployment rate rose to 10% and double that in communities of color. 40 million people were without health insurance. We had a broken immigration system, an inhumane criminal justice system, a broken education system, more poverty than the richest country on earth should ever tolerate, 2 wars, an unsafe dependence on foreign oil, the threat of terrorism both here and abroad. The challenges were endless and pretty daunting. And I readily admit that it was incredibly frustrating and disappointing to encounter such particle political resistance, such a painful toxicity in Washington at a time when I thought we should be all working together to meet our challenges head on. But notwithstanding the enormous resistance, we focused on true north. Now, how do you do that when you have an avalanche of opposition coming your way every single minute? Well, that's the next lesson, courage. Last night, I had the honor of accompanying President Obama, Mrs. Obama, and Vice President Biden to Boston, where President Obama received the President John F. Kennedy Profiles in Courage Award. It was on the anniversary, this year being the 100th anniversary of President Kennedy's birth. So it was a very symbolic and touching award for President Obama to receive. You would think after being President of the United States, everything else would pale in comparison. But looking at the expression on his face as he was given this award, I knew he was genuinely touched. The selection committee determined that he had demonstrated courage to move our country forward in the face of great opposition, and that, they determined, was true courage. Now, President Obama said in his remarks last night, quote, "Any fool can be fearless." Courage, true courage, derives from that sense of who we are, what are our best selves, and that we need to dig deep and do hard things. By every possible metric, he did just that. Over the last years, our unemployment rate went from that high of 10% I described down to well below 5%. Our poverty level in 2015 was the lowest since 1968. Over 90% of our country now has health insurance without annual caps or without discrimination for pre-existing conditions. And those of you who are 26, up to 26, can stay on your parents' plans until you reach that age. A good thing, I think, for you. Teenage pregnancy is down. The typical family income grew in the year of 2015 by the largest jump in recorded history. And Americans all across our country in our class of 2015 are graduating from colleges at a higher rate than ever, and you are entering the best job market since 2007. That's not bad for 8 years. We tried mightily to bend the arc of the moral universe towards justice, and we attempted to eradicate the inequalities in our educational system, in our justice system, in our immigration system, in our healthcare system, in our marriage system, because we now know love means love. Again, as President Obama said last night, the arc of the moral universe bends because we bent it, because we put our hand on the arc and we moved it in the direction of justice. And when I say we, I actually mean many of you. That's what we means in this country. So one of the amazing parts of my last 8 years is I had a chance to travel this country and meet people from all walks of life who came to the White House. Ordinary people, I say, who did extraordinary things. There were a group of people, though early on in the president's first term, who couldn't come to the White House, but they walked from Florida to Washington, D.C. Why, you might ask, couldn't they come to the White House? Because they were dreamers. They were not legal citizens, and they feared if they came through the gates of the White House, they might be detained, because that was the law. And what they said to me was, here are our stories. Here are our stories being brought to this country before they could remember, presuming that they were citizens until they tried to register for a job, or enroll in college, or acquire a driver's license. They grew up just like every single American, loving our country. And when we went around this small circle and I said, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a teacher. I want to be a social worker. I want to serve our country in the military. I want to give back to this country I consider home. Those handful of people that I met in a church basement across the street from the White House motivated me mightily. And I tell you this story to talk about the power of your stories, the power of your willingness to show up, your power of you to engage. And on the world stage, we galvanized leaders to end the Ebola epidemic. Many of you probably don't even remember how scared we were at the threat of Ebola. We reached a climate change agreement with nearly 200 countries. We kept Iran from developing nuclear weapons. We established diplomatic relations with Cuba for the first time in 50 years, and every single day we fought to keep you safe. We made progress, and even though our work to perfect our union is far from over, when President Obama ended his term, we knew what worked. We knew that roadmap to true north. So the next lesson I learned at a very early age, we must all be open to explore and discover common ground. Now, I was born in Iran, and I spent the first 5 years of my living there. Why, you might say? I get asked that question a lot. Some people fill in blanks and make up horrendous reasons for why I was born in Iran. But I was there because my father was leaving the army. He was a physician, and as he applied for jobs at teaching institutions around the United States, he was unable to secure a job at an institution that he wanted, and where he was able to get a job, it was for half the salary of his white counterparts. And so at that point, the United States and Iran had strong diplomatic relations, and he and my mom, who were a little crazy, I must admit, explored outside of our boundaries. And they went and helped start a hospital in Shiraz, Iran, a city that at that point did not have the best health care. And what I learned there has truly inspired me as an adult. I played freely and openly with children from different countries, with different religions and backgrounds and races. I discovered that in spite of our apparent differences, large and small, we had much in common. Living in an underdeveloped country gave me a unique appreciation for the United States that so many people who have not lived out of our country do take for granted, whether it was drinking water or that had to be boiled, or eating food that had to be peeled, or not eating raw vegetables, or the freedoms and the rights and the liberties, though not perfect, are stronger here than in so many other countries. And I also learned that although the United States may be the greatest country on earth, it is not the only country on earth. And we can learn a great deal, thank you, from people outside of our borders. Those early experiences profoundly shaped my willingness to try to connect with people with different life experiences than my own. And it gave me an invaluable context with which to view both the United States and the world in which we live. And so, as an adult, I have always assumed that with effort and a willingness to listen, that I could figure out how to get along with anybody. Well, just about anybody. I also grew up appreciating that my learning, growth, and quality of life would be greatly enhanced by the diversity of my circle of friends and colleagues. Similarly, class of 2017, we are richly diverse, and in fact, the most diverse in the Midwest. You are better connected, you are more likely to see yourselves as a part of the global community than any generation before you. And your diversity has no doubt enhanced the very experience that you have had at this fine university, and it will serve you into the future, because as you enter the 21st century global marketplace, appreciating and being comfortable with people from diverse backgrounds is not just a strength, it is a necessity. When I was in college a long, long time ago, it's probably hard for you to believe that there was no internet. There were no cell phones. That means no texting, no Facebook, no Snapchat, Instagram. You get what I'm talking about. In fact, to date myself, I remember when my family got call waiting on our house landline telephone. And it improved my life dramatically. Today, the innovation and technology revolution has been and will continue to be a catalyst for transformational change at an unprecedented pace. You don't need to be born, as I was, in a foreign country to interact with and learn about people from all over the world. You can do it simply with the touch of a finger. And although there is so much to be excited about, this new reality is rife with challenges, and I believe they require an inclusive strategy in order to tackle them. The forced intimacy, the smallness of our world, also means that we are inextricably linked, and how we choose to confront this new world order is a test of our humanity, our tolerance, our core decency in profound and fundamental ways. As historical boundaries and traditional social norms give way, some feel threatened by this change, and there are people desperately trying to hold on to the status quo, trying to build barriers, both figuratively and sadly literally, to try to regain their sense of identity, certainty, and stability. But all the while, the ground is shifting seismically beneath their feet. We also digest information on demand, and too often people drift to consume sources only from which they agree. The intellectual curiosity that was nourished and stimulated while you were here gives way to what is easy, our comfort zone. And then, of course, there is the polarized beast of our domestic politics. You know I had to touch on that, if only for a moment. My former world, and frankly, one of my greatest disappointments, rather than creating a safe space where we can address the needs of a strong and diverse country in a globally competitive world, our politics has become pathetically tribal. Short-term political interests taking precedence over the long-term best interest of our society, rather than inclusively working to build consensus with a willingness to be pragmatic and compromise not being a dirty word. It is a necessity, and I believe a country as large and as diverse as ours must have a willingness to compromise. It cannot be my way or the highway. So we must ask ourselves, what should be our responsibilities to one another and one nation to other nations? I say we simply can't afford to pull back because the times are challenging, or to isolate ourselves from each other or the rest of the world. The world looks to the United States to lead on moral authority, lead on innovation, lead on diplomacy, and as a last resort, lead in combat. But in order for us to effectively lead, we must lead by example, for the whole world is watching us. It's scary, right? But it's here that I want to talk about why I remain so confident about our country's future. The technologies that connect us the world over can bring together the best minds and hearts where it never was possible before. For example, diseases that were a death sentence a generation ago, a disease like AIDS that took my sister-in-law and one of my best friends, today people survive. It's no longer a death sentence. Artificial intelligence is right here, and it can be used wisely and be an incredible force for good. But class of 2017, mostly my optimism comes from you. My hope is our very real and oftentimes excruciating challenges motivate you to use your talents and your skills to be a positive agent for change, because we are counting on you, which brings me to my next point, citizenship and what it means. If you are a citizen, then fully embrace your responsibilities of citizenship. That starts with voting in every election, not just presidential elections. Your elected representatives are responsible for tackling many of the challenges that I mentioned a moment ago that will directly impact your life and the life of those you love. Yet, in 2016, only 43% of eligible voters voted. Come on now, you know we can do better than that. Your voices, your values, your interests will not be represented in our democracy unless you vote. Yes, there are some across our country who are trying to disenfranchise you and make it harder for you to vote, but do not disenfranchise yourself. The responsibilities of citizenship do not begin and end with the ballot box. Government that is truly of the people, by the people, and for the people requires your representatives to engage with you. But you must also be willing to reciprocate. If you don't engage, how can you hold them accountable? Without your engagement, you give them license to make decisions based on the narrow, self-serving priorities of special interest groups that spend a lot of money lobbying them. You have to be the counterforce. Their re-election must depend on us, we, the people. Unless you're willing to honestly and fairly engage, and yes, where you determine it's appropriate, challenge your government, how can it be possible for it to reflect your true north? Ours is a big and diverse country. We are stronger when every voice speaks up. And when we do not just passively love our country, we must actively engage to perfect it. And everyone, citizen or non-citizen, at every age, can participate in civic engagement. So in addition to voting and engaging with your government, our democracy rests on the quality of our public servants. Democracy is as strong and only as strong as the talent of the citizens who serve in the government. That means you, class of 2017. So without reservation, and despite the challenges I faced in my last 8 years in Washington, and the ones from my public service so many years ago here in my beloved hometown of Chicago, without any hesitation, I encourage you to jump in the arena. Serve in the government and the executive branch at any level where you respect the leader, state, local, federal, it doesn't matter which level, because they all impact our country. And also run for office. Any office, I truly don't care. Run for office. Be the elected official who understands that you are accountable to us, we, the people. Our government simply reflects the values of our country. If our communities are divided, our elected officials will be too. If the people do not respect or feel compassion for the needs of others, then those values will infuse our politics. And finally, take the long view. Not only is our world much smaller than it was when I was your age, but it is spinning much faster. Let's face it, we expect everything right now, and mostly we can get it. But remember that although technology has accelerated our efficiency, the toughest problems require not just a technical solution, but cultural change, a change in attitudes, in habits, in hearts. And we believe, and I know it's hard to see at times, the injustices that demand action going unaddressed immediately, but change requires patience and resilience and perseverance. I would say to you, since many of you may not remember, that when President Obama took office, same-sex marriage was legal in 2 states. 2 states. At the time that the Supreme Court ruled It was legal in 37 states and the District of Columbia. And now we know it is a law of the land. But it seemed like a thunderbolt when the Supreme Court ruled, but then that discounts the generations of people who toiled for equality. And so I say to you that our history is full of zigs and zags all along the way, disappointments and loss and failure, and all those setbacks hurt. But please find the courage to be resilient. Be willing to engage and to listen most closely to those with whom you disagree. And bounce back from the inevitable defeat, because I always say if you do not fall down, it means you are not trying hard enough to get outside of your comfort zone. Life isn't a sprint, it's a marathon and a relay race, so pace yourself, replenish yourself, make your life feel whole. Be kind, call your parents, don't just text them. That was for the parents who were in the audience. Trust me, I still say that to my daughter, and she's 31. So in closing, class of 2017, you stand on the shoulders of many, and there are responsibilities that go along with the privilege of the degree that you are about to receive. No doubt that you are the change that our country needs. Never let anyone tell you anything differently. Let's follow the two quotes from President John F. Kennedy that I treasure the most to guide your path. The problems of human destiny are not beyond the human reach, and ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Please always remember that throughout our country's history, change has often seemed impossible until, after much long and hard work, it becomes inevitable. Impossible until it is inevitable. That inevitability is in your hands, class of 2017. So be a force for good. We are counting on you, and yes, we can. Thank you very much.